Hello everyone, welcome to another video on 10 key topics for securing a grade C in our Edexcel GCSE exam this summer. So 10 of those topics that we think are going to definitely turn up are worth easy marks around the grade C boundary and should be some marks you should be relying on in that search for that overall grade that you're after. This video is focusing on straight line graphs, which you may well know as y equals mx plus c, and we're only focusing in this video on how to draw them. There's a separate video on the more difficult type of question that comes up later in the exam on if the graph has already been drawn for you and you're being asked to find the equation of it, or sometimes, and quite tricky, they talk about perpendiculars or parallel lines to a graph. So this is the more basic question, turns up in the first few questions, and we're given typically an example like this. So it says, taking values of x from -3 to +2. So what that's saying to us first of all is we're going to be drawing our graph within the range of -3 to +2. So we're going to be using these numbers here. So x is going to be from -3 to -2, -1, 0, 1 and 2. So those are the numbers that I'm going to be plotting, and remember graphs are all about coordinates, so we're going to be learning to plot some coordinates here. Draw the graph of y, and whenever we see letters in a graphs question, what we're actually referring to is the coordinates. So when we say y, we mean the y coordinate. So let's say that again. The y coordinate is equal to 3 lots of the x coordinate minus 1. So we've got a rule there. It says to us, if you want to know the y coordinate, so you've got a pair of points that you can plot, well, it's equal to 3 lots of whatever the x coordinate was, subtract 1. And I've got my x coordinates because the examiner's kindly given those to me. So basically this is just a substitution question. It's put these numbers into that formula, work out what the corresponding y values would be, and plot the points. So in terms of our GCSE, this table here that we're going to fill in, that's going to get us 2 marks. And then drawing the graph in a minute, that's going to get us 2 marks. So 4 good grade C marks here through just a bit of algebra substitution. So let's remind ourselves what the rule says. It says the y coordinate is equal to 3 lots of, 3 times, whatever the x coordinate is, subtract 1. Now, bit of a hint for you here. I and my brain, I prefer dealing with positive numbers, so I'm going to start this end of the table and then work my way back to these negative numbers, but there's no reason for you to do that if you feel really comfortable with your rules of negative numbers. So I'm going to take this value here of 2, so x is worth 2, so the 2 gets substituted in here. So instead of 3 lots of x, it now becomes 3 lots of 2, so 3 times 2 is 6, subtract 1, 5. So I now have a coordinate that's going to be on this line. 2 along, 5 up, 2, 5. So I'm going to repeat the whole process now, but this time I'm going to use the number 1 in here. So 1 goes in here. 3 lots of 1 is 3. Subtract 1 is 2. Repeat the whole thing again. This time I'm going to put the 0 in. So 3 lots of 0 is 0. Subtract 1 minus 1. Now, I'm going to tell you a bit of a trick here, and I would rather you didn't use this in the exam, but it's a good way of checking your work. A graph of the form y equals mx plus c is a straight line graph. That means it's going to be straight. There's not going to be no kinks or bends or curves in it. It's not going to be a quadratic. It's not going to form a parabola. It's going to be a single straight line that we can draw with a ruler. Therefore, to be a straight line, all the points are going to have to be in a constant gradient. They're going to have to go along the same kind of trajectory, if you like. And to do that, these gaps are going to have to remain the same. If the gaps change, then the gradient of the line changes. So what you could do now is you could cheat and you could say, well, this is going down by 3 each time, so I'll just fill in the missing numbers. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to use it to check in a minute. So let's complete the other values. -1 now goes into here, so 3 lots of -1 is -3. Subtract another 1, so go down the number line even further, -4. 3 lots of -2 is -6. Subtract 1 is -7, and last one, 3 lots of -3 is -9, subtract 1, -10. Let's just use that little checking thing that I talked about a moment ago, check this is working. Well, there's a gap of 3 there, and there, and there, and there. So I've got a constant rate of change. It's probably going to form a linear graph. So let's now plot these. Remember, x is along the corridor, left and right. Y is up the stairs, it's the vertical movement. So my first one here is to -3, so I go along to -3, and then I go down to -10, and I plot my point. Make sure you use an X, not a dot, because it's more accurate, and it's right on the cross, the intersection of those 2 grid references there. I'm then going to do -2, -7, so -2 across, minus 7 down, mark my point, minus 1, minus 4, so minus 1 across, 4 down, 0, minus 1, so 0, minus 1, 1, 2, and then 2, 5. And if we've done it right, and there should be no reason why we haven't, we should now be able to take our ruler, and if you don't do this part in the exam, and I know it sounds obvious to say it here, you will lose the final mark, because at this point you haven't actually created a graph. I should be able to join all of those points with one single straight line. And what's really good habits, but it won't gain you any marks in the exam, is to write the equation of the line next to it. So this line represents y equals 3x, take 1. 4 GCSE marks there. Now the one below it is another past paper example. This time it looks slightly different because first of all the table's already been drawn for us and some of it's already been populated, but also the equation's got a fraction in it. None of that should matter or faze you or scare you in the exam because it's exactly the same approach as the question that we've just done. This says the y coordinate, the number we're trying to find here to fill in these blanks, is equal to half whatever x is. So take the x value and half it, divide it by 2, and then add 3. Remember, we've got that kind of trick, if you like, that way of checking, which is that the gaps, the constant change here should always be the same. So in theory we could use that to check in a minute, but let's crack straight on here and let's substitute minus 3 in. So half of minus 3. So take minus 3 and divide it by 2, so half it. So that's going to give me minus 1.5. And then I add 3. So on my number line I'm at minus 1.5 and I come up 3 places. Well, that's going to get me to positive 1.5 or 1.5. And just a little bit of advice here, a geeky hint if you like. I would, if this was me this summer, I would be turning the exam paper over, drawing a number line on the back from kind of plus 20 to minus 20, and I'd be doing that kind of calculation on it, so I've got kind of a visual check for it. So let's go again, and this time we're going to use minus 2. So half of minus 2, or minus 2 halved divided by 2, is minus 1. Add 3 takes me to positive 2. And at this point I'm probably going to be naughty and check here. Well, that's gone up a half, that's gone up a half, that's gone up a half, that's gone up a half. Looks like I've got the right kind of pattern of numbers here. Half of 1 is a half, plus 3, 3.5. And look, it's gone up a half again. And then last one, the 2 goes in. Half of 2 is 1, plus the 3 is 4. That's gone up a half, and that's gone up a half. So we've probably got the right numbers there. Let's put them into our graph, plot them, join them up with a straight line, and we're done. So minus 4 across, 1 up, minus 4, 1, minus 3, 1.5 as accurately as we can, minus 2, 2, minus 1, 2.5, 0, 3, 1, 3.5, 2, 4, 3, 4.5. And other than the fact that I probably haven't plotted those half points particularly accurately, these should now form a straight line, and I can pick up those 4 marks in my GCSE.